Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the third session of Transform the Changing Consumer. Welcome. My name is Abdul Salam Abu Salim, and I'll be your MC for today's session with Petra Kynclova. So as you may know, the Transform series is a new free online seminar that explores the growing impact of digital transformation on business and society. So we will be covering a total of 6 areas ranging from the future of work, to smart cities and communities, circular economies, and many more. So today, however, we're looking at the fourth of these areas by focusing on how digital technologies are changing consumers' experience and expectations. So today's session will be also a part of our weekly series SDG 4B, and we're delighted to be joined by Petra Kynclova, who is a statistician in the Department of Policy Research and Statistics in the UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. So Petra will be telling us a bit more about how the UNIDO are helping the champion SDG 9 of the Sustainable Development Goals. So feel free to send your questions during the session using the Q&A function, which you will find it at the bottom of your screen. Please be aware that the chat function is disabled, so only use the Q&A tab. Okay? We will then compile these questions and ask Petra to address them as many as she can in the time that we have. So looking forward to your questions, and please just remember that to use only the Q&A function. So without further delay, I will hand you to Petra. So whenever you're ready, Petra.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for a very nice introduction. I'm really happy that I could be here today. It's nice to have an invitation to some other webinar than just related to the work of international organizations. Today, okay, let me share my slides. So today I'm going to talk about mostly the Sustainable Development Goal 9, which is focusing on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. I think that my talk will be a little bit different than the previous series on SDGs, because I'm going to introduce a little bit more about what is the role of international agencies in the process of monitoring progress towards sustainable development goals. And in particular, I would tell you more about what is the role of data and statistics in this process, because it's really important to have timely and internationally comparable data to help also countries to track their progress and to see where they can improve their performance. So first of all, I would like to introduce my organization a little bit more, because we are a specialized agency in the United Nations system. Our headquarters is in Vienna, but we also have a lot of a number of regional offices all around the world, which are helping to also be to appear in the field and to help countries directly there. The primary objective of the organization is the promotion and acceleration of industrial development in developing countries, and also in countries with economies in transition. And of course, we would like also to promote international industrial cooperation, which doesn't only mean to be in the current country, but also to cooperate with other countries and to improve the performance in the region. Why industrial development is important? It's definitely a driver of economic growth, but not only that, it also helps to reduce poverty in countries, to create more jobs and thus also increase income of the population. But what is also very important is that industrial development should also be sustainable, meaning making industries cleaner and also using energy efficient technologies. I am a statistician, so as I'm going to talk a lot about data, I think that it's also important to know what our statistics division is involved in, because our mandate is not related only to SDG monitoring. We were there also before Sustainable Development Goals. And our mandate is to collect data from countries and to compile internationally comparable statistics, which is mostly structural business data and other indicators related to industrial development. We also produced, based on the data, we also produced the methodological and analytical documents to help countries to track their progress. And we are also involved in building and developing new statistical standards and methodologies to be used all around the world. And of course, it's important to help countries directly with their statistical capacity building, meaning that also the production of data in the country should be coordinated with the rest of the world and with our statistical standards to really see what is happening there. And the new mandate we received in 2015 is also to allow or enable monitoring of SDG9 indicators, which are related to the 2030 agenda. I decided to start also from the complete beginning of this of the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, because it is a UN resolution, meaning that this is a document which was adopted by all UN member states in 2015. And it's an agenda driven from or based on high-level political decisions. This also means that all the targets are formulated in a very challenging way, and sometimes that they are also very contradictory. But what is important, and that's something what we all know, is that the agenda features 17 sustainable development goals, which are described in 169 targets, which is a lot to be achieved by 2030. And to allow a proper way that how this should go, that there is also a controlling organ, which is the Central UN Platform for the follow-up and review of the 2030 agenda. And this is called the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. We call it HLPF. And the meetings take place every year in July, where all countries and all agencies report also on their progress towards sustainable development goals, and also report what are the main issues and other work-related problems. And because we have 17 goals and 169 targets, we also needed a framework which would align these targets with proper indicators, which would serve to as a reporting baseline for countries and also for the global progress. So for that reason, there is an interagency and expert group on SDG indicators, shortly IIDB, which is composed by member states. So the group is driven by countries, and regional and international agencies play a role as observers. But what is also new compared to Millennium Development Goals is that other stakeholders can also participate in these meetings. So it also now includes researchers, NGOs, and also other stakeholders who would like to participate. And the main task of the group was to develop and implement the global indicator framework for the goals and targets of the 2030 agenda. It was a very long process of negotiation and developing new methodologies, because most of the proposed indicators didn't have a clear guidelines, because, for example, environmental indicators are quite new to most of the countries, because nobody reported before progress on different indicators which did not exist before, and they were recognized by the 2030 agenda. So currently we have 241 indicators, which is actually a huge number and huge burden for countries and also for international agencies to work on them, to develop them, and to show the progress towards SDGs. So we have different types of reporting. Starting on the country level, we have a national reporting, which means that countries can report on their progress towards SDGs as they find it relevant for their national development, meaning that they could produce any type of report that they consider where they select goals and targets which are, for example, covered by their national development plans and strategies. On an official political level, they produce so-called voluntary national reviews, and they are reported every year to the high-level political forum on sustainable development. So this is the nationally driven process. Then we have thematic reports, which focus on specific topics, such as our UNIDO report on inclusive and sustainable industrial development. Or, for example, UN Women produces number of reports on gender indicators and how women are empowered throughout all the goals. Or, for example, ILO reports on decent work. But there are a number of thematic reports depending on what is the main focus. Then we have also regional reports. Those reports are mostly produced by regional economic commissions, which are also bodies of the UN system. And they focus on the regional progress. For example, I listed here the Asia and the Pacific regions report. And yeah, they focus on different sub-regions of the whole focus area. And then we have the global report. This is a report compiled by the UN Statistics Division in New York. And this is the official Secretary General's report on progress towards achieving sustainable development goals. We have plenty of them, we call it a glossy report, for example, where we only highlight the main stories. Then we have a progress chart where we show how the regions are on the track on specific indicators. But what is important on this report is that this is a report which is built on inputs from various international agencies, and those agencies are using national data. So it's really a report based on a cooperation of a lot of bodies included in the process of SDG monitoring. This is a diagram where I would like to show you how difficult and complicated the process is, because all of the data are produced by the National Statistical System, which consists from the National Statistical Offices, or also line ministries and other national institutions which produce data in the country. For example, when I'm talking about industrial statistics, they could be produced by the National Statistical Office, but sometimes this mandate goes to the Ministry of Industry, which produces the data by themselves. But this could also, because some of the indicators are not only produced by the official bodies of the country, but sometimes they come also from the private sector or academia, or some other civil society organizations. And then these countries, these data come through the national system. They are reported to regional organizations or to us as international agencies, where we have to check if the data are follow our standards, the international standards, if they're clear, and if we could probably adjust them for different units or estimate them to fill the data gaps, and then to produce the final time series, which are internationally comparable and also timely, to be able to see what is really happening on the global level. And all of these time series from different agencies collected from countries then go to the global SDG indicator database, which is maintained by UN Statistics Division. And these data are available for everyone. Everyone can access them and also use them for the particular reporting. But let's go back to SDG 9. SDG 9 is devoted to industry, innovation, and infrastructure, which means that everything is aligned about inclusive and sustainable industrial development, which can be achieved only together with innovation and infrastructure. It's very important for economic growth in general, because it generates employment and also income in the country. And it's particularly important for countries at the early stages of industrial development, because for them it really means that they could participate in the global value chains, and they can increase the value added of in the economy, and also to increase also the gross domestic product of the country and their economic power. But of course, it's also important investing in new technologies, to be involved in the international trade, and also to produce everything in an efficient way, using cleaner energies and all new technologies, which would also reduce the environmental burden of the industrial production. I have selected here, or I just summarized there all indicators which are officially assigned to the global, to the goal 9. I tried to split them into 3 groups, which would correspond to these 3 thematic areas of goal 9. But actually, at the end, I found it very difficult, because the indicators listed on the right side as industry, these are indicators which are assigned as industry related, and UNIDO is responsible for reporting on them. But of course, it's not always that clear if they belong to industry, or they could also be a part of innovation or infrastructure. For example, when we are talking about the share of medium and high technology manufacturing, this is also something which is clearly related to innovation. But when I have to really split it into these 3 groups, let's say then we have infrastructure here, which is about building better infrastructure, supporting countries with official international support, and innovation, which is mostly related to research and development expenditures and improving access to a mobile network and other important features. Of course, these are only officially selected indicators, but we could assign much more there. Much more indicators would reflect industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So this is just what I want to mention here. These are official indicators that we are using for international reporting, but of course, for any kind of national reporting, it can be extended for more. As I mentioned, industrial development is important for economic growth, but recently we also had a look on how industrial development could be linked by using empirical evidence to other indicators which reflect social and also like environmental progress. And here I just selected two simple graphs. On the left side is the poverty headcount ratio, which clearly indicates that, yeah, okay, so on the x-axis we have manufacturing value added per capita, which is often used as an indicator of the level of industrial development, meaning the higher MVA per capita in the country is, the more industrialized the country is. So we could see that there is a clear negative correlation. So if when country industrializes, then also the poverty headcount ratio decreases. And we can see that for the early stages of industrial development, the improvement is pretty significant. And on the right side, we have a health indicator, life expectancy at birth in years. And here we could see a positive correlation, meaning that also with industrial development, we could see that the life expectancy at birth is increasing. So also the health indicator is very, like as countries industrialize, the technologies become better and also the health system improves significantly. We split also countries into 4 different groups. This is just for reporting purposes, and we classify the countries as per their level of industrial development. So we have industrialized economies, emerging industrial economies, other developing economies, and the last group is corresponding to least developed countries, which is the official list of UN countries classified as least developed countries. This is just to explain these 2 graphs, that why we split them into 4 different groups. Well, so UNIDO and our role in the 2030 agenda, it's not that different as it could sound, because UNIDO's mission is to promote and accelerate inclusive and sustainable industrial development in our member states. And this mandate was already approved by our member states in December 2013. So before the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by all UN member states. So I can only say that it's just a natural recognition of the work what we were doing even before. But the concept of inclusive and sustainable industrial development is very similar, because inclusiveness is an important part to include everyone, to make a benefit of an equal distribution of industrial production and in general industrialization, which is also in line with the Sustainable Development Goals motto, which is leaving no one behind. And of course, sustainability addresses the need to decouple the prosperity generated from industrial activities. So not to really to have the industrial development in balance with the environmental impact on our planet. And this all what was already approved or adopted by our member states is now recognized as a part of the 2030 agenda under the goal 9, to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and also foster innovation, because all these thematic areas goes together. So as I mentioned, UNIDO's role in SDG monitoring is given by our statistical mandate as well, because we are called as a custodian agency of the 6 SDG9 industry-related indicators. And we are responsible for the data collection, compilation, and dissemination of such a internationally comparable statistics, and also to support our member states in using these indicators in formulating their national development plans and strategies to achieve inclusive and sustainable industrial development. And if we just refer to these indicators as they were approved by the UN Statistical Commission, then they also cover all 3 dimensions of sustainable development: the economic, environmental, and social. So here, when we list all these indicators, we have the economic ones, which are focusing on the share of manufacturing in GDP, and also the level of industrial development, which is described by manufacturing value added per capita, and also by the indicator showing the proportion of medium and high technology in manufacturing, and here described by the manufacturing value added. Then we have the social part of sustainable development, which is described by manufacturing employment share in total employment, and also by small industrial enterprises and their importance in the economy, because they very often are essential for creating employment, but they are not really reflected in the value added because they only produce a little bit, but they are very important for the infrastructure as well. And the second indicator is also like if these small industrial enterprises have access to finance to expand their production. And as an environmental indicator, we have the CO2 emissions per unit of value added, which is like a CO2 intensity of manufacturing production in the country. And because I'm still talking here about how important data are, so that's why we decided to launch a new product. It was launched a few years ago, and we call it Industrial Analytics Platform, because we think that it's not only about having a database or showing data in a table, but to help countries, and not only countries, but any type of user, of data user, to clearly see immediately based on the data where the country could improve or where the progress was made. So we have launched this platform, which is really data driven. And this platform has two major parts. One is a data explorer, where you can explore industrial performance of countries or regions based on trade and manufacturing data. And then we have a second part, which is based on articles. We publish regular articles, also using the same data that you can find on the platform, and also to introduce or to our users what are the most popular topics right now. Like on the right side, you can see that the newest article published recently is explaining the main features of the 4th Industrial Revolution. But you can also find there another articles addressing other policy issues, all related to industrialization. And recently, or last year, actually, the second part of the last year, we launched a new tool, which is also part of the Industrial Analytics Platform. And we call it DG9 Industry Tracker, which is a tool to explore a country's progress towards achieving industry-related development targets. And this tool consists of 2 parts. The first question helps to answer what is the SDG9 industry performance in a country, and the second part looks also on what is the progress made towards those SDG9 industry targets. I will then demonstrate the tool on a country example later. But first, I would like to describe the first part in more detail, because the first part is based on a so-called DG9 Industry Index, which is a composite measure we developed based on DG9 Industry-related indicators that I already mentioned. It captures 5 industry-related indicators. So all of them, what I already explained, except of the small industrial enterprises, because there we lack data. Not every country reports on small enterprises or statistics, which is disaggregated by the size of enterprises in the country. So we use these 5 indicators into a one single measure, which is great to get attention, because it's very nice to see rankings in countries, like how they place, who is the best, who performs better than the other one. But on the other hand, it's also quite tricky in the sense of not to really stick to these rankings, but also to work more as an invitation for a closer investigation of these dimensions. So on the left side, you can see different dimensions, which are these 5 indicators, and how this could be used, we'll show you a little bit later. This is the ranking just on the global map to see that the higher the score is, the better is the performance towards DG9 industry-related targets. And you could see that the dark green could be found mostly in Europe or in Northern America. But on the other hand, the lowest performance is in the African region. And this is also a problem, because if we want to report or include more countries in this DG9 Industry Index, we need the data. And the problem very often is that we don't have data coming from these countries. So, for example, you could see that Africa, not only that there is a low performance of these countries within this index, but also we don't even know what is happening there, because these countries don't produce data and their statistical system still needs a lot of improvement to be able to report on these indicators. And the second part of the DG9 Industry Tracker, we call it DG9 Progress and Outlook. And it corresponds to the formulation of targets, because, for example, 9.2 target calls to promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and by 2030 significantly raise industry's share and employment and gross domestic product in line with national circumstances. But for example, you can also see there a clear formulation to double the share in least developed countries. And we wanted to explore what is the progress of countries made since 2000 until now, or also what are the prospects of the country to achieve these targets as formulated in the 2030 agenda by 2030. So we created like 2 indices, where the one corresponds to progress, and you can actually see then either the progress is negative, insignificant, fair, or substantial. And then what is the outlook, or what is the prospect for future? If you want to achieve the target, then either reverse the trend, accelerate progress, or the country is already on the track. And okay, now I will show you how this tool works. For example, we have published 4 different countries studies on African countries, which was very difficult because of the lack of data. The link is included in the presentation. So if the presentation is then shared, then you can also access the full study on Egypt here, or other countries, which is Ghana, South Africa, Egypt, and Ethiopia. So So here we have the industrial analytics platform. I already selected here Egypt. You can select the focus country, the country to compare with. I selected here Morocco because this is a competitor in the Northern African region. And we can also compare it to the African region. So the first part where we had the DG9 Industry Index, we could see that Egypt scores on 71st place. And also compared to the rank reached in 2000, we could see that it actually fell down in the ranking. And when we look on this tracker, we could see the different dimensions like value added per capita, employment, CO2 efficiency, and technology. And we could see that the country performs not very well on value added per capita and technology. So if we want to improve the performance of Egypt or investing in some dimensions, it would probably be these two categories. We could see that also their performance is on average much lower than the African region. So if we look on these two particular dimensions, then we can see all 5 indicators here. But when we look only on the value added per capita, which is of our interest, we can see that Egypt improved its value added per capita, but much slower than, for example, the rest of the countries in the group of emerging industrial economies, which still means that there is an untapped potential. So although the progress is kind of insignificant, we need to accelerate the progress to improve the performance of the country. And the second dimension was technology. So we can see that Egypt actually decreased its share over the time, which is not favorable at all when we want to invest in industrial development. So the progress is assigned as negative. And if we want to reach the targets, we have to reverse the trend. The industrial analytics platform is designed in the way to also explore industries in more detail. So if we want to see more, we can continue then explore the manufacturing sector in Egypt, and we will end up on a different page where we could explore these trends in more detail. So if I'm interested in what industries are actually important for Egypt's economy, then I would see here that the manufacturing is very concentrated in fuels and chemicals. So, for example, compared to Morocco, where the main manufacturing sector is still food and beverages and tobacco as well. But still, we could see also how this was moving since 1990 and how the structure of industries was changing in Egypt. So the main idea of the platforms is to allow users to interactively investigate what is happening in the country in time and also from the structural perspective, and to decide what are the main features in a country and what could be improved, where we could invest also more in technology and other important industrial development indicators. Okay, so as a conclusion, what are the ways towards better SDG monitoring? For us as an international agency, we have to support our member states, and not only our member states, in improving monitoring, which means like statistical capacity building to produce the data and to make them available for tracking the progress towards SDG 9. What are the most challenging questions right now is what will also be the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, because not only on the data production, because this is also very challenging, but also on the tools we developed, because maybe they are no longer suitable for tracking such a progress, because obviously everything will slow down. And also another feature which should be reflect more, and this is not so well covered by the 2030 agenda, is also how to track the progress of the fourth industrial revolution, like adopting new technologies and how are firms coping with this new challenge. So thank you very much for your attention today. If you have any questions also after the webinar, I would be more than happy to answer all of them. So you can also send me an email if you want. And here are also like links to UNIDO statistical data portal and to our industrial analytics platform. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Petra. So let's kick off with some questions from the Q&A session. Q&A section we have. How does UNIDO gather data? I'm sure I think you've covered some of that, Petra, in your presentation, especially with collecting data in some less developed regions, the challenges that you face. But there is a question here: how you guys collect data from countries such as Tanzania, where the generation of data and other than the government or official bodies is prohibited by law. So how can you explain the main challenges that you face when you collect data from less developed or less open countries, especially in these regions in Africa?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. Well, first of all, it's difficult to collect data in these countries because they very often are produced on a very irregular basis, meaning like once in 10 or 20 years even. And that's very difficult. And this is where actually where we play the most important role, because we should then help countries to develop the programs on how to collect data on a regular basis, and also to not only on a regular basis, but to really help there to develop the whole system. And what is also challenging is that developing such a system is very expensive. So to keep it, to help countries to produce the data on a regular basis, it's really a long-term strategy where also the countries should be more involved by themselves. But what are challenges like Tanzania? Tanzania is actually a very good example because this law is very restrictive. But we, for example, we had a project in Tanzania in last few years where we were helping the National Statistical Office with their data collection on industrial statistics. And the countries, the country in like such a Tanzania, they provide the data to us voluntarily because they want to be involved in the international comparison. They want to be part of the UN monitoring system. So it's also in their favor to report data to international agencies like to us.
Very interesting. Maybe another part of the question is, so in these cases, Petra, when you don't have access to data from some countries, okay, due to different reasons like law or the lack of data, how you deal with this when you perform producing your reports? So how you deal with missing data with countries, how you estimate the growth, for example, economic growth or industrial growth of these countries that they don't have, or they have a lack of data?
Well, there are different cases. If the data really don't exist and they are not produced by the country, we leave it as a blank. There is no way how we can estimate the data or fill the gaps in an official way, because we also have to respect the country. We cannot just say like, yeah, we think it's like that because it's a raw estimate, and the country could not be really in favor with what we present. So usually for official country reporting, we leave it empty. Is not reported, but for calculating aggregates or like global or regional aggregates, we very often estimate the countries by filling the gaps by statistical procedures which are approved.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. So another question here we have regarding the tool that you just shared with us. Are there any similar databases tools from other stats units for other SDGs, such as those looking at the sustainability, carbon reductions, etc.?
Well, I don't know, honestly, at least not at this moment. I think it's desirable to have them, but it depends on the agency who is responsible for reporting, especially for those custodian agencies that are involved in the monitoring. But I think that the main difference for us is that the economic statistics is much more explored than, for example, environmental indicators. The lack of data for reporting on environmental indicators is a much bigger issue than economic indicators. But yeah, I think now I don't know if there is any such a platform, but I'm sure that there is a lot of effort to produce similar initiatives like ours.
Okay. Okay, I don't think that we have other questions. Okay, so before wrapping up, I would like to thank Petra for your insightful and interesting talk, and to taking the time to presenting us. And also I would like to thank all the participants on all the questions. And for those who are interested, there are some more sessions that will be conducted at the same time of Transform the Changing Consumers. So these will taking place for tomorrow and Friday. Especially tomorrow with, we have our guest is Edine McCarthy, founder of Insight Design, David Cullen, CEO of Opinions, and Grace Pinchy, Consumer Insight Specialist at Port Bayer. And on Friday, we will have a speaker panel with our own Professor Dr. Theo Lennon and Dr. Pierangelo Rosati and Dr. Gary Sinclair. And thank you very much. Thank you, Petra, for your time and for your presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.